Hey everybody, this is Beacon the Point Mechanic, and today I'd like to introduce you to a new product that just came out called the Lollipop Pro handle. This is something I've been working on for a while now, and I finally got it dialed in the way I like it, and I think you're going to like them too because I put a lot of love into the design of these, and they're an absolutely amazing handle. It's 3D printed. It's made with a nice flexible material. It uses a raised texture for a grip, so it's a lot grippier than a standard 3D printed handle. It takes the Flowtoys version 2 capsule, and you can get these with or without bearings, depending on your preference. Now, a lot of you might be familiar with an old handle I used to make called the reactor handle. This was a great handle. A lot of people loved it, including myself, but I ended up parting ways with this company a few years ago, and I think they're out of production on these because ever since then, on the regular, people reach out to me saying, we can't find anything like this on the market. We really want a bearing handle that takes the capsule. Can you please make something? So after some consideration, I realized I hated the idea of such a great idea just disappearing into Poi history. So I got to work on designing something different, and this is what I came out with. Now, I'll cover all the differences between the two. I'll give you specs, tell you how to take them apart and things like that. And then, as always, at the end of the video, I'll give you a discount code in case you're interested. In the meantime, let's get started with some specs. These are both 4 inches long, and I think that's the perfect length. No matter what size hand you have, these are going to be easy to hold on to, and they just fit in there really nicely. They're the same weight, or roughly, just depends on the setup that you have, whether you're using a bearing or what size bearing you use. For me, I have a 10 millimeter hybrid ceramic bearing. So with that, the capsule lock, and the handle, it's around 70 grams. Now, if you're not using a bearing, you're gonna get this little plastic adapter, and that goes in place of the bearing, and that's obviously gonna weigh a bit less. The grip on these, quite a bit different. The reactor had a rubber sleeve that went over the 3D printed handle, and I loved the way it felt. But some people were complaining that the older they got, the more issues they were having with the material starting to roll back on itself or peel up, or in some cases the sleeve would come off altogether. Now, I don't know what the cause of that was because I never personally had that issue. It might have had something to do with the oil in your skin, or if you left them out in the sun, which you weren't supposed to do, that was probably the biggest culprit. But I wanted to make sure that nobody had that issue at all. So this is all 3D printed, including that textured grip. So if you know 3D printed handles, you'll know that they're slippery and a lot of people hate them, including myself. I've always talked crap about them over the years, but I was so surprised how much I liked this raised texture because it's nice and grippy and it stays in your grip where you want it to. So big improvement. Light dispersion. So Flowtoys made 4 capsules. They made the Pod Poi version 1 and version 2. Then they came out with the Coral Poi and they had a version 1. Then in the last probably 3 weeks, they came out with a version 2 capsule, which they are trying to transition all to that capsule now. The version 1 Pod Poi capsule used a different chip altogether compared to the other 3, and it also used a wider shell, so that doesn't fit in either of these. So if you have that one, definitely consider upgrading. These both have the version 2 Pod Poi capsule in them currently. Now, I'm not too sure how well this is going to show up on video. A lot of times LEDs on video don't look the same as it would in person, but if I have these sitting side by side, I can tell a little bit of a difference. The reactor probably has a little bit better light dispersion in the midsection because it's going through more material with the shape of this, plus with that rubber, where this doesn't have to go through as much, so it's a little brighter, but it's a little bit more concentrated. This one here is the newest case from Flowtoys. This is the Coral Capsule version 2, and this case has a little milky frosted look to it, so it helps disperse the light better. So these two side by side, I would say, is pretty much equal. This might have a slight advantage. It kind of softens the light so it spreads out a little bit more, but even with these two, it really is only noticeable when they're still, because when you're spinning them, I can't tell the difference at all. So I don't think it's going to matter whatever capsule you have, as long as it's not the version 1 Pod Poi capsule, you should be good. The shape, quite a bit different. So the reactor had a more tapered midsection, and then the end kind of flared out a little bit. And it also had this lip here on the front and the back where the plastic met the rubber. This is called the Lollipop because it's shaped like one. So it's got a knob on the end, it's got a straight wall, and it's consistent feeling all the way down without that extra lip. I really like knob poi. I've been spinning them for decades now, and I wanted to replicate that on the back side. So this is 39 millimeters, which I think is the same dimensions as the Flow on Fire sphere knobs that a lot of us use. This is 3 millimeters wider on the back end than it is on the reactor. I really like knobs for a few reasons, but the main one is I'm able to manipulate my tosses a little better. So I really wanted to have that on the end of here because I use my thumb and my index finger. Well, with my normal poi, I'll a lot of times choke up on the rope like this just to get more precise with certain moves or to spin faster or whatever. And then when I'm ready to go to a longer, for longer moves like flowers and stuff, or do tosses or contact, I'll slide out to the knob like that. Well, with this setup, I can do the same thing. And this is really beneficial for me for doing tosses a lot smoother, especially that toss right there, which is basically holding on to the handle like that. I was not able to do that with the reactor, so definitely a big improvement. And that knob just feels good in your hand no matter how you hold it, and it also keeps it from pulling through your hand. To take these apart, super easy, pop that out, and then on the end, there's a capsule lock, and that serves three purposes. Number one is it holds your two shells together without the need of an extra O-ring. Number two is it locks it into the handle, and then number three is it protects the button on the back from dust. I go out to Burning Man a lot and other festivals, but Burning Man in particular, it's known for how much dust it is, and when the dust gets under your buttons, it's a pain in the butt just to change your modes and stuff. So with that button cap on there, you don't have to worry about it anymore. So if you've never spun a handle like this, you might be wondering what the size and the weight is going to be like compared to your daytime practice poi. Well, there might be a little bit of an adjustment period to get through, but to be honest, for me, this is almost my preferred set. There's nothing I do on my daytime poi that I don't do on these. This is my main LED and fire poi setup, and I just love the way they're balanced. Some people say you have to have light handles to be able to do contact. Well, as you can see, I pretty much call BS on that. I think it's just whatever you get used to. If you're into gunslingers, these do gunslingers so freaking well. Tosses, if you have a real light handle, a lot of times you have to throw your arm around more to get the handle to move, but with this, you barely flick your wrist, and especially with that knob on the end there, it just flies around really easy. Now, I don't do three poi and I don't do juggling, so I can't really speak to that. I do a little bit of two poi one hand, and I would say this is probably feeling just a little bit bulky for your main three poi setup, but whatever your style is, I think you're gonna like these. So you might be wondering whether or not to get bearings for your handles, and that's going to be kind of hard to answer until you get your hands on some to see what you might be missing, but I personally prefer bearings. I like that little bit of extra added weight that I get out of it, especially for fire poi. If you have a really light head though, it might take some getting used to how fast the handle moves around. You can either adjust your toss or put some added weight in your head. I really like it also for how smooth the overall experience is. I don't have to move my wrist as much to keep my planes straight. I can actually lock my wrist if I want, and the bearing does all the work for me. But the main reason I like bearings is doing tangles and orbitals. And with that inline hybrid ceramic bearing in there, those orbitals will just spin for days, especially the longer you use them, because the bearing has a little bit of a break-in period till you get maximum spin. A lot of us started off with swivels, including myself, and those were okay, but there was one major flaw, which was handle flop. You'd have this weird break in the rope there, or even if it was built into the handle, it would have a lot of flop, and it made for some really inconsistent catches. A lot of times the handle wouldn't end up in your hand, and it was especially noticeable for me with slide tosses because that handle would be flopping around so much, and I gave up on swivels as soon as I started doing those. But this is one piece of rope all the way from the handle to the head, so that takes away the flop. Now, as I said, these are the same capsules you're going to find in your pod poi or your coral poi, or in the case of this setup, the ice poi 2.0 from Flow on Fire. I just did a review on these. You can watch if you like. I also have one out on the coral poi, and I'll probably make a standalone video and link it in the video description or maybe in the comment section that'll show you more in detail on how to control these. I don't want to make this video too much longer, but just a quick few things about these. They are USB rechargeable. There is 5 different brightness levels, 64 different modes, and they're adjustable. There's 60 favorites that you can save on its own page for easier access. You have 2 show pages, so you can build a show around a song and have the light change its mode to the song if you want. For that, I recommend getting the app. You can control it with your phone. You do have to purchase a separate device called a bridge, which helps communicate with these, but it's really, really handy when you have a lot of lights. There's kinetic modes, not all of them, but a lot of them are kinetic, and that means that this knows what your poi is doing. My favorite mode is called Sparkle Pony, and when I'm spinning slow, it is blue. If I speed it up, it turns green. If I do a toss, it turns red, and I can change the colors of those if I want. Let's see, the main thing that I really like about this though is, especially with this setup, is you can either have each light doing its own individual mode, or you can pair them up all with the control of one button. So instead of having to stop mid-spin to change my modes, I can just reach my pinky around the back side of that button there and push it and change my mode. As simple as that. The capsule inside there is warranted by Flowtoys. It's a lifetime warranty. It's a really easy company to deal with. They make a great product, and these two things combined together, I think, makes it the ultimate handle. Anyways, let's get on to how to take them apart. To remove the capsule, hold on to the handle lightly, pinch about 1 inch back on the rope, push it forward until the rope bunches up, and that's going to make it stiff, and you're going to use that to push the capsule out the top. If you're using a thinner or more flexible or softer rope that's not as stiff, you might have to pinch further back on the rope to get enough material to make it stiff. In the beginning, a lot of times people make the mistake of squeezing onto the handle way too tight, and if you're doing it, especially in this section, you're basically pinching onto the capsule and fighting against yourself. If you're going to put any pressure on it, do it in this area because the inside of this is concaved and it matches the shape of the outside here, so it does provide a little bit of relief. But what I recommend doing is that. Gotcha. But seriously, do the circle, and you're basically creating an opening for the capsule to come out, and you're pressing against the circle versus really squeezing on it. Now, sometimes it's still a little bit hard to get out and you might need to lubricate it. I use chapstick and just barely put some on there. You don't even want to see it. So just dab it like that and then spread it around, and that's going to create a thin lubricating film. Now, if you're still having issues, you can use this included tool, and that's going to go over the rope like that. Push it forward until it bottoms out against your bearing or your rope adapter, and you're going to push straight. You don't want to come in at an angle and push against your seal. So what I normally do is pinch with these fingers and then push with those 2 fingers, and that makes this whole thing stiff, and it makes it a lot easier to get out. To get it back in, just pull the bearing until it bottoms out, and then just press with your fingers like that. If you're not using a bearing, don't pull on the rope, just use the capsule to push it through because you don't want to pull on it and pull the capsule lock off. So this is your button cap, and if you're using a coral capsule, it'll just snap on like that. It should spin around freely and come off pretty easily. If you're using an original V2 capsule, it's going to have tabs on both sides that stick out a little bit. So on the inside of this has recesses that match that. To get it lined up, try to find the 3D printed vertical seam and match it up with the seam on your capsule. Put one side on first and then use your thumbs to snap the other side on. Once it's in place, give it a little bit of a twist. Make sure that you feel that free play. If you don't, that means it's not lined up right, and you'll have this being a little oblong and it's not going to fit in your handle very well. To get it off, if you got really strong fingers, you can pry it off. If not, though, the easiest way I've found is to gently open this up, and it should pop off the back. Just make sure that you're not prying on this board here. You don't want them to bind, but I've never had an issue, but just use caution. If you're going to be using these without bearings and you're going to be putting your own cap on your rope, make sure that you first stick the adapter on, first stick the rope through the handle, then put the adapter on, and then put your cap on. I've made that mistake a couple times, but make sure that you also have these in the correct orientation. So these will both have a top hat. So the top hat part, the smaller section, goes into the handle like that, and then this will seat into the hole on the end. The shorter one goes to your coral capsule, and it's just going to sit on top like that. The longer one goes over a V2 capsule, and since this has tabs on it too, do the same thing, line it up at the seam. This one just pushes straight on, and you also want to make sure that you feel that free play. And then to get it off, just twist and pull. If you're putting your own cap on your rope and you're not using a bearing, with a shell like this, you have all this room in this area, and you can also put a cap down here if you want. With a coral capsule, there's that space there. If you have a modified V2 capsule, it won't work with these adapters, so only use this if you're doing a bearing setup. Now, I have some videos on how to put caps on the end of your rope, but I really recommend just having whatever company you're getting these from to make a setup for you. It's going to be a lot less messy and less chance of burning yourself, but you want to make sure that you know what type of rope that you're getting, because some ropes melt and some ropes don't. This rope right here has to have an epoxy on it, where this flow rope I can actually melt the cap on. With an epoxy cap, I recommend having just a little bit thicker of a cap, just so it's less chance of it breaking. You can get by with a little thinner cap on the melted version, but you also want to make sure that it's not so thick that it's hitting into your capsule, and not so thin that it's going to pull through the bearing easily. A modified V2 capsule versus a coral capsule is about 3 millimeters, I want to say, shorter. So if you're using a coral capsule that's not modified, you kind of have to use a thin cap, which doesn't work very well for epoxy unless you cut this back section off. Where the battery backs up to this plate here, anything beyond that you can cut off and you should be fine. If you're using a bearing, you're going to have a seal on both sides. That usually does a pretty good job at keeping the dirt out, but if you have these landing in the dirt an awful lot, eventually you might get a bit of a crusty bearing, so you'll want to clean it, but it's quite easy to do. You just want to be careful. You want to find a sharp, pointy tool. I think an X-Acto knife works better than a needle or anything else that I've tried, as long as it has a really pointy tip. You want to remove the rope side seal. Sometimes you can't get this seal off because of the cap, and if the rope is too swelled up, it's hard to pull the bearing down enough to loosen it. But if you can get it down a little bit, get that seal open too, so that whatever, solvent or air you're using to blow through here, it's going to blow the dirt out the backside. Make sure that you're opening the outer part of the seal. You don't want to get on this inner part right here, because that's the most important part of the seal, and if you damage that, you're kind of screwed, but it's a little bit more forgiving on the outside. Just go straight in to that outside edge, and then it should pop up. Now, you can use a liquid solvent if you can find something. I used like a carb cleaner and it seemed to work all right. I'm sure there's something better out there, but sometimes compressed air works, but a lot of times the dirt is like bound to the grease too much. Now, if you remove the grease and the oil with a solvent, I would recommend putting something back in there. Oil seems to collect dirt a bit more, and there is some grease out there that collects it less. Skateboard bearing grease would seem to be a good option because it's formulated for higher speeds, less rolling resistance, and it's obviously more exposed to dirt than an average bearing, so that should be pretty good. Once you put some in there, just put that back into place and you'll feel it snap and you're good to go. As far as care goes for these, I recommend only using isopropyl alcohol to clean them. I think it just does a better job, and it also evaporates quickly. Also, I recommend not exposing these to direct sunlight. I've seen other 3D printed handles out there that get yellow with time, just like a lot of plastics. The more UV exposure, the more they will yellow. Don't leave them in your house window. Don't leave them in your car. Just keep them in your bag till you're ready to use them, and you should get a lot of life out of these. So if you want to get a set of these for yourself, you can currently get the handles or the entire poi at Flow on Fire, and the discount code for that store is Poi Mechanic. It's all one word and it's all capitalized. If anything ever changes with that code, I'll update it in the video description, and in the future when other stores sell these, I'll also put that discount code up there as well, so keep an eye out for that. If you have any comments or questions, do feel free to reach out to me either directly or leave a message in the comment section below. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.